Most people in history, they're looking for peace and quiet, right? Well, not Joseph Smith. The founder of the Latter-day Saint movement, he wasn't one of them. In fact, this guy seemed to run headfirst into trouble. He had this core belief that the only way to get polished was through friction. So why? Why did he believe that constant conflict was the only way forward? Let's get into it.
Okay, so get this. Just weeks before he died, Smith says this. I mean, really let that sink in for a second. A fish out of water if I were out of persecution. For you and me, being free from trouble, that sounds like a vacation, a dream. But for Joseph Smith, it sounded like he couldn't breathe.
And that's really the big puzzle here, isn't it? What kind of mindset leads a person to not just put up with conflict, but to actually need it to feel alive?
All right, so to really get this, let's jump back in time. We're going to May 1844. Picture this, Nauvoo, Illinois. Smith is up on a platform in this bustling city he basically built from scratch, and he drops what is, I'm not kidding, maybe the weirdest flex of the entire 19th century. You see, for him, peace wasn't peaceful. It was like being in a stagnant pond, just slowly dying of boredom. It was like, uh-oh, has God forgotten about me? Did he lose my number? No, he needed that constant, turbulent current of opposition. That's what felt like air to him.
So where does a wild idea like that even come from? Well, this wasn't just some personality quirk. Oh no, this was baked right into the DNA of his theology. He basically saw the whole universe as one big cosmic boxing match. It's this idea he called opposition in all things. And here's the key takeaway. In his world, you just can't have good without evil. You can't have light without dark. And you definitely can't have success unless someone, somewhere, is trying to tear you down. The struggle? That wasn't a glitch. It was the whole operating system. And this table just lays it all out perfectly. Look, for most of us, if a mob shows up, that's a problem, right? A big one. But for Smith, that meant the devil himself was paying attention. And if the devil's paying attention, well, that must mean you're pretty darn important. So persecution wasn't a sign of failure. It was like a divine receipt. Proof he was doing exactly what he was supposed to be doing. Okay, but this wasn't just some high-minded, abstract philosophy. No, this had real-world consequences. Let's look at how this whole cosmic idea actually played out on the ground. And, well, it meant spending a lot of time in court. So that number right there, somewhere between 40 and 70, that's the estimated number of legal cases Joseph Smith was tangled up in during his lifetime. I mean, if courthouses had a frequent flyer program, this guy would have had the highest possible status. He didn't just put up with conflict, he practically lived there.
I mean, from the very beginning, getting hauled into court for using seer stones to find treasure, all the way to spending years playing this crazy legal ping pong to stay out of Missouri, he learned to speak the language of the law fluently. For him, a lawsuit wasn't a catastrophe, it was just another Tuesday. In fact, a day without some legal threat probably felt weird. Too quiet.
But what happens when you push this philosophy to its absolute limit? I mean, the most extreme test you can think of. What happens when you take that fish and you throw him into a cold, dark dungeon? Yeah, that's Liberty Jail, winter of 1838. And let me tell you, this place was a horror show. We're talking a stone box with walls 4 feet thick, ceilings so low you couldn't even stand up straight. The food was basically poison, and all the while his followers were facing a literal extermination order from the state governor. For almost anyone else, this would be it. The end. The breaking point. But not for him. Instead, this is what he writes from inside that dungeon. He completely reframes this nightmare scenario. It's not a punishment, he says. It's an education, a necessary one. These horrible things, he wrote, will give you experience, and they will be for thy good. And here's what's so fascinating. It's how he used the experience. He didn't just get through it. He turned it into a branding opportunity. He walks out of there not as a victim, not as a broken man, but as a leader who's been forged in the fire. The incredible friction of that jail cell, that's what was turning the rough stone into a polished prophet. And that brings us right back to where we started in 1844. Because by now, all that constant pressure, all that friction, it's shaped him. He's in his final form. He's not just dealing with storms anymore. He is the storm, the very center of the hurricane. Just think about all the hats he was wearing. At the same time, he's the prophet of a new religion, He's the mayor of Nauvoo, he's the chief justice, and he's the lieutenant general of a private army. I mean, every single one of those jobs is a source of power, sure, but it's also a guaranteed source of nonstop, intense friction.
So at the exact moment he's making that fish out of water comment, what else is going on? Oh, not much. He's just running for president of the United States. He's secretly practicing plural marriage. He's just ordered the destruction of a printing press that was critical of him. And he's got former friends and allies plotting against him. To anyone looking in from the outside, this looks like total chaos, like a train wreck. But to Joseph Smith, this was momentum.
And that's exactly how he saw it. This wasn't just some small-town spat over a newspaper. It wasn't just politics. In his head, this was the great cosmic war in heaven, and it was playing out right there on the streets of Illinois. The stakes, for him, were literally cosmic.
And you know, there's a real psychology at play here. Some people just thrive in high-stress environments. It's the only place they feel truly alive. For Smith, that constant threat of jail or even death, it was like a psychological salt. It kept him sharp, preserved, focused. What was the alternative? Peace? Peace meant dealing with tax codes and fixing sewage lines, and that's the kind of boring, dry land where a guy like him goes to die.
And tragically, or maybe just fittingly, his comment turned out to be grimly prophetic. Just a few weeks after saying it, he was killed by a mob while in jail. He literally died swimming in the very water he'd spent his whole adult life in, a storm of legal chaos, violence, and intense religious belief.
You know, for his followers, his death wasn't seen as a failure. It was almost the logical end. The only possible conclusion for a man who was never, ever built for a quiet, peaceful retirement. He was, from start to finish, a man of the storm.
And that kind of leaves us with one last big question to chew on, doesn't it? When you build your whole identity around the fight, when friction is the only thing that makes you feel alive, is a peaceful ending even on the table?